Hello, everyone. Just checking that you can hear me. Please confirm if you can hear me. Hello, everyone. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your patience. I was just trying to get through some technical things because I wasn't sure if everyone can hear me, but yes, you can. Hello, Hello, Maria. Hello, Vida. Hello, Toby. Hello, Brian. Hello, Nombulelo. I hope I didn't murder your name. Thank you all for joining this. Well, it's afternoon here in Lagos, Nigeria. I think some people are in the morning time zone and some people are late in the afternoon. So, my people in East Africa, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. I'm hoping that this will be an interactive session where we'll just have a conversation on strategic communications for development organizations and NGOs. So, welcome again to everybody, and feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Where are you joining us from? It'd be good to know. I know some people are coming from Nigeria. We have some people in Kenya, South Africa. It'll be good to know. I'm currently in Lagos, Nigeria, but I like to describe myself as a global citizen, so I can be anywhere in the world because I mean, the world is, well, technically now a global village. So it'll be good to know where we have people from. And I would also like to encourage you as well, if you have colleagues that are working in this space and you feel that they will benefit from this conversation, please feel free to share on your LinkedIn, WhatsApp stories, Instagram stories, any community that you belong. Let's all, I'm a firm believer of learning together and growing together as well. So it will be perfect to do that. Okay, so let's see. I'm just checking the comment section, just making sure that I have everybody's comments. Fantastic. Okay. Hi, Mienda. Welcome. Thank you for joining us from SA. Okay, all right. So we're going to go into it because we literally just have an hour to go through a lot. I guess you can see my slides. So let me go into the next slide while I hope that more people will introduce themselves in the chat. Yes, we have 2 South Africans. Yay. All right. Okay. So my name is Adedoyin Jayesimi. Some of you already know me. Some of you, you've either already watched my content on YouTube. Some of you I probably have interacted with one-on-one. But if you're just meeting me for the first time, my name is Adedoyin Jayesimi. I'm a chartered PR practitioner, and I'm also a certified strategic communication management professional. I love everything that has to do with communications. I'm also a strategic communications advisor and a corporate trainer. So what I do is advise organizations with regards to their communication strategy, which includes CEOs, boards, executives, and I really love training communications teams. So what I'm doing today, I do it on a regular. So training communications teams, I really love it. I really love engaging with communications teams and communications people. Some of the work that I've done, organizations, Mothers to Mothers, GIZ Nigeria, African Philanthropy Forum, Gates Foundation, Leading Ladies Africa. These are specifically development organization, but my work cuts across different sectors: finance, real estate, tech, policy, you name it, and that's one of the things I love about being an advisor. I'm able to work across different sectors and industries. And then I create content on YouTube. Again, back to what I said about loving to share knowledge. Okay, so I'm seeing more comments in the chat. Hello from Nigeria, Zimbabwe. I can't even pronounce. I think I could pronounce the first part of your name. Sisi, maybe Sisi Dashe. Maybe that's it. Hello, hello, hello. Hello from Rwanda. Happy that you're all here. Okay, before we get into our conversation today, for those of you who may not know, we're having a 2-day masterclass specifically for people that are working in the development sector, and it's on development communications. I would also be co-facilitating this course. It's going to be over 2 Saturdays. Not a full day, probably like 9 to about 3:34-ish, Nigerian or West African time. And we're going to just be doing a deeper dive on some of the things that I will be sharing today. But most importantly is bringing in that practical element, also being able to address your unique context and scenarios. And I'm always very particular when I teach or share knowledge with communications professionals, is to say you have to take the knowledge, you have to take the best practices, but it's also important for you to contextualize it for your own unique context, for your own unique scenario. And that's what we're really going to be doing during the course. We're going to be talking about strategic communications planning, stakeholder mapping, storytelling, donor communication. That's so important now. Digital media, media relations, especially if you're working in an environment where media relations can be tough, where the expectation is you pay for media, and you know that there's usually not enough budget. How do you work around that? And then measuring communications impact, because now people are asking to see the ROI. So this is going to start on Saturday 27th June. So the first class is on Saturday 27th June, and the second class is on Saturday 4th of July. And this is the link you can register. I'm sure in the course of the webinar or the LinkedIn Live, somebody from the Comms Avenue team will put the registration link so that you can join us. Okay, so let's get into today's conversations. Why strategic communications? I really love talking about strategic communications because not only have I learned about it in terms of going back to school, taking certifications, and really mastering the frameworks around strategic communications, I've actually seen the difference that strategic communications actually makes to the work that you do, to the results that you are able to achieve, and how it also makes an impact in terms of how you are perceived as a communications professional. If I should just we're about 50 on the call now, if I should just ask everybody to write in the chat true or false, have you ever been in that position where you felt like, oh, these people are coming to me last minute? Lastminute.com programs has gone to do the work. They've done the program, they've done the ideation. They then say, oh, come and make it pretty. I'm sure a lot of us will write true. So if that's not been your context, you can write false. But for a majority, because again, I also find that for some people that hasn't been their reality. And if you are in that WhatsApp group that's not your reality, you are truly in a very great space. But for a lot of people, it's true. It's true that you're brought into the conversation later on. It's true that people conceptualize things without thinking about the communications impact of what they're doing. And then they come back to you and you're like, wow, this is just really not the right time to be bringing this. Or they ask you to write a press release of something that has already been done and designed without your input. So strategic communications really does help you to change the conversation. It helps you to elevate communications from a support function to a strategic driver. And this is something that I am very, very, very passionate about, is how do we elevate communications to that space where the first person they're calling, they're not going to shape or ideate around, I saw Nubelelo wrote all the time, I want that status quo to change, and that's a personal burden that I carry. And by the grace of God, I really pray that we begin to see that change where we're brought into the room, but it usually always has to start with us. There's the we as a communications professional, and there's the advocacy that needs to be done in terms of the function as a whole, but that's a bigger conversation. And the next thing, really, why strategic communications? It helps you to align communications outputs with organizational priorities, goals, and objectives. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this conversation is because things are changing a lot within the sector. There are so many things that are not, in fact, not even just the sector, the world at large. Every time you turn on the news, I was facilitating a webinar last week on geopolitics, macroeconomic events. Something is always happening. Now, right now, there's a lot of drama around the World Cup. There's always something happening. So, how do you situate communications within that? How do you situate relevance within that? And then being able to shape public trust and organizational credibility. I need you to understand that you play an important role as a communications person, whether your organization acknowledges or appreciates it, the confidence has to start with you. You have to understand that you have value that you're bringing to the table. If trust is gone, if trust is out of the window, if the stakeholders don't care, if donors don't care, that organization, the funding source will dry and they cannot exist. So you are actually very, very important, and it needs you to carry yourself in that way. And then, of course, strategic communications really does help to strengthen partnerships and multi stakeholder collaboration. So, those are just some of the few things. There's so much more, but those are just some of the few things that will be highlighted. So, I'd like us to go into what is changing or what has changed within the development sector context. Like many of us can attest to the fact that things have changed. I'm sure if I had the conversation to ask every single person, you would acknowledge that something has changed. For those of you that were involved in maybe directly or indirectly with USAID programs, you know you felt the brunt of policy change, and it's been across the board. So it's not even just government policy, it's also stakeholder priorities, and then all of these things, funding models are shifting. That's what it is at the end of the day. For a number of social impact NGO development organizations, funding is shrinking. Now, this is not everybody's reality. I must actually add, if you're working in a foundation that has received an endowment from maybe a parent company, or it's led by a high net worth individual, perhaps you're not facing so much of like there's money, right? Because when I have this conversation, I always have to delineate that there are some organizations that money is not the issue, but where money is being channeled to is now where the change is. But for some people, they're like, look, these are donor, they've canceled this program, they've reduced this funding, they're not more supporting in this way. These are real realities. And then please, as I'm going through the list, what do you think is missing from this list, just from your own unique context? Because I really would like this to be interactive. What is also changing from your own reality on ground? So number one is funding. Funding is, for some people, is shrinking. For some people, is being shifted to different things. And sometimes this funding channel shifts to in accordance to what the world prioritizes. So there was a time where gender, everybody was really passionate about gender. Not like people aren't passionate about gender, but we were talking more now of climate. And even that climate, it's the buzz is going down. It's going down. People's attention is being turned to other things. So money follows, let's just say, where the world's attention is, right? And then donor expectations are increasing. So donors now want to see measurable impact. They want to see that, look, every dollar being spent, they want to see what's coming back in. And maybe the donor that didn't care before, they want to really know what are the numbers, and more people are seeing that as well. Audiences are becoming more skeptical, and there's what I have termed as the cause fatigue. I was interacting with the leader of a social impact organization a few weeks ago, and we're just having conversations on the kind of stories they should tell. And I said, look, gone are the days, well, maybe not gone are the days, but right now, because it's almost like every single day, there's like, I don't want to say, well, bad news. There's something that just makes you go like, what exactly is happening here? People are, I don't want to say they're desensitized, and I don't know if people can relate to what I'm saying. It's almost like you just scroll past anything, because if you're trying to preserve your mental health, for example, if you're trying to just preserve your mind space, anything that tells you, oh, this person is sick, this person is dying, war, there's only so much of that that you can take in. There's only so much. And so you're finding that all of those emotional heartstring, oh, this person was in despair, those kind of the Cinderella act story that we tell, this was their state before, this is where they are now, or trying to, you know, stare at people's heartstrings to give, it's not as effective as before because now people are tired emotionally. A lot is going on in the world. And so it's very, very important to bear that in mind. I see Deborah saying organizations are working around creating new models of funding. Yes, they have to be very, very creative about it. And then one thing you also realize is that a lot of leaders of organizations, and it's important that we're setting this context. So you might be like, are they doing? Where are we going? I always like to understand the context. Where are we starting from? They don't have the answers. A lot of them are confused. They might come up, speaking strong, bold, and all, but they're trying to figure a lot of things out because a lot of things are uncertain. Nobody really knows where the world is going. Some people can postulate, but everybody is like working with different metrics that are moving. So thank you so much for sharing that, Deborah. And please, more people, feel free to share. Global priorities are also shifting. I've touched on that. And then national and regional policies are becoming less friendly. So less friendly. So you see, not organizations, countries deprioritizing things that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Organizations then have to reshape their programs in line with national policies. So those are real things that we have to deal with within the development sector. And it's in the middle of all of these things that you, as the communicator, this is where you have to do your work. This is where you have to say, okay, what exactly is going on now? Where am I going to see impact? Where am I going to find room to demonstrate the results? If and you'll find that this is also having a ripple effect on the work that you do within the development sector. We have to think differently about how we deliver impact, how impact work is done, how impact work is communicated, how we're carrying our stakeholders along, how we're keeping them informed, and how we are also engaging the leaders of the organizations that we work in. So those are real realities. So let's move to the common and emerging, and I've bunched them together. Some are common challenges because we face them, we face them over and over again. And then some are emerging because of the changing status quo, because of the changing landscape. We have challenges that are now emerging. Now, like I did before, I would really love to see more comments, right? What other challenge can you add? Because remember, the idea behind this is I would really love for it to be practical and interactive. So if there's a challenge, of course, this is what 4 challenges I've highlighted here. This doesn't begin to capture all of the challenges that people would have faced, but at least I feel like where we are now, these are the top 4. So thinking about the context that we just shared previously, or I just shared in the previous slide, what are the implications for you working in this space as a communications professional? Number one is shrinking budget. I think that budgets have been shrinking since ages past. But not only are budgets shrinking, expectations are rising. And I've always felt very sad for my colleagues working in the development sector because you're expected to do more with less. And then with expectations now rising, so you're now finding now that your work is being tied to fundraising. And if you're in that WhatsApp group, please just put a comment in the chat section or an emoji so that I know that I'm speaking to people that this people are resonating with this. So there's shrinking budget, but then there's an expectation that, hey, take this money, but I need you to 10x this money, I need you to 100x this money, I need you to get us funders. So there's a fundraising team. For some of you, you will not even have fundraising team. In fact, what I'm beginning to see now is that roles in development organization are now combining. So you see communications and partnerships manager, communications and fundraising manager, communications and knowledge. What's it? It's knowledge management. And these things are different disciplines, but you find that they're now sandwiching so many things onto your portfolio that is just, it's a lot. So you have shrinking budgets, you have rising expectations, and then development communicators are being expected to do more with less. How many of you can relate to that? that is a very, very big challenge. It used to be, or it was a challenge. It's not a new challenge, but in the context that we are now, it is an even bigger challenge. Again, that's why I wanted to set the context. Donors now, their priorities are shifting, their expectations are different. Getting people to donate, getting people to support your cause, support your mission is not as easy as it was before. I think Kyla says another challenge is the lack of essential. Yes, yes, Kyla, this thing of one person expected to do a job of five people. It's so, so true. Lubabatu says, lately my work has been closely tied to researching on funding opportunities. Exactly. And it shouldn't really be so, but sometimes I wouldn't blame the organizations because, again, I like to think about the middle ground, right? If really funding sources are being dried up, they have to do more will try to use the resources they have as best as they can. So I'm not giving them the pass, but I try to understand. But it's a lot of pressure for those of you that work in that space. Then there's declining public trust. Now, if any of you followed the Edelman Trust Barometer, I've been reading it now for about 3-4 years. Initially, when I started reading it, trust in NGOs and development organizations was very, very high, while trust in government was declining, starting from COVID and all the drama that happened around COVID. And then trust in private sector organizations, that also started to decline. However, what we're beginning to see now is that trust in NGOs is now declining because NGOs used to be the trusted source because, hey, they're doing something that's mission based, mission driven, altruistic, all of those great stuff. But now NGOs are now facing increased scrutiny based on different factors. Again, that's why I was trying to set the context at the beginning. So it means that it's not enough for you to come and tell a story that, hey, we're doing this impactful work. People are now scrutinizing what you said that you did. People are now scrutinizing your impact. People are now even scrutinizing your impact from their own lens and perspective. And this ties to the next point about audience polarization. I was watching the news this morning about there's an incident that happened in Belfast that led to some protests, and people are angry. Houses have been burnt. A lot of things are happening. Now there's division. Okay, this incident was wrong, but now racism is coming into it. Now this is happening. This polarization right now amongst the audience, and then your stakeholders, there is a divergence in their interests. So you can actually have 2 or 3 major stakeholders, and their interests and expectations are very, very different, which means that is more stretching for you. I think it was Kailas that was talking about one person doing 5 people's job. So you have to now stretch yourself to make sure that you are communicating in the way that that individual donor expects. And during the course, we're really going to be talking about how do you manage donor communications properly? How do you ensure that you're effectively engaging and communicating with your donors and managing that relationship well? Because if you lose a donor that is given about 50 or 60% of funding to your organization, that is a big deal. And then the next challenge is the redesign and measurement and simplification of impact, right? So, how we talk about impact is not just numbers. People want to see tangible things, people want to see tangible results. People just don't want to see numbers that lack context. So, how do you simplify it? So, things that are not over people's head, but that they can see it. Almost like for those of you that have projects where you go into communities, people want to go into those communities and see that, oh, you're making a real change, you're making a real difference. So what this means is that this communication of impact, this redesign of impact means that it's not just about your annual report anymore. It's not just about your impact report. You have to think, how do we creatively show our impact? And we're not waiting till the end of the year. So all of these things, so you can just imagine when talking about all of these challenges, it still sits with you as the communications professional to navigate all of this. I don't know about you, but even me now that I'm speaking, I feel overwhelmed on all of our collective behalf because it's actually a lot, but it is manageable. I'm just checking the comments. Yeah, Maureen says she couldn't agree more. Lubabatu says she can relate. Thank you for the feedback, and please feel free to drop any comments, things that this resonates, you can relate, or examples you want to share from your own context as well. So going into key competencies for enhanced results, more than ever, you need strategic thinking. Don't get tired of hearing that word, being strategic. You need to be able to sit down and say, what are the priorities of this organization? What can I deliver realistically from communications? And then how do I go about this? And this involves understanding your organization strategy. Definitely for a lot of you, the strategy for your organization in the last 2 years has changed significantly. It has changed significantly. What exactly is their priorities in terms of your donors? And then you have to understand the policy environment. You cannot be disconnected. You can't be a communicator working in this space and you don't have your ears to the ground in terms of what are the policy shifts, what are the changes, our donors, what exactly are they saying, what is our organization doing. Oh, let me just pause. I see some comments. Deborah says, keeping, yes, that's with regards to impact. Storytelling, yes, I definitely agree. In fact, how we tell the stories need to be really, really different. Hi, Mildred. Mildred says, is the issue of impact. Impact must be communicated. Exactly, exactly. Beneficiaries are becoming more vocal. In fact, there's a whole lot I can actually say about this point that you have raised, Mildred, because it's so, so, so true. It's so true. So, this strategic thinking, I want to contextualize it for you. If you find that you are the only person in your organization that is currently managing communication, which is actually not realistic, what I always like to advise or advocate for is to say, what is a quick win that I can get through communications? And that's why thinking strategically actually does help. What is a quick win that I can make or have that will, at this time, help me to demonstrate that, hey, communications can actually deliver results, and then use that quick win to advocate for more. Some of us, I don't know why, we don't advocate for the resources that you know, we need. Some of us, we do, but when you hear no once and twice, you give up. Why? You have to keep going back. You have to advocate with results. You have to advocate with data. You have to advocate with, hey, this is what we did with this, and this is the outcome. If we have this, if we have one more person, if we have at the very least somebody that is doing graphic design, because tell me why you are the graphic designer, you are the videographer, you are the editor, you are the content creator, you are the strategic person. It's not sustainable. But that's the status quo and the reality for a number of you. How do you advocate for the resources that you need, human resources and financial resources? So when you think strategically, think in terms of when you understand the organization strategy, what can I do as communication to deliver something that will be very tangible? And how can I use that as leverage? In the business world, they call it leverage. How do I use that as leverage to ask for something more, to ask for something that I need to be able to do my work well so that I don't burn out? A lot of us are burning out because we're overworked. So, strategic thinking is very, very, very important. Thought leadership and narrative building. How do you position your organization as a credible voice? Remember, I said in the last slide that there's declining public trust in NGOs and development organizations. So being able to position your organization as a credible voice is very, very important. And you need to know how to frame narrative, because right now with AI, Claude, ChatGPT, there's so many narratives out there. In fact, it's so amazing how somebody can just sit down and frame and develop one narrative that throws your entire organization left field. So you must be able to create narratives, and it's not just defensive narratives, because a lot of organizations, that's what they're doing. It's defensive, it's reactive. Oh, this is out there about us, let's react. No, you have to be proactive about building that thought leadership and that narrative. So thinking strategically about, where do our leaders need to be, what platforms do we need to explore, and think beyond just development focused platforms, because you now have organizations that private organizations saying we're willing to pump in money into a particular cause, we're willing to pump money into this particular initiative. How do you position yourself to be seen by those organizations or individuals? Again, there's creativity in that. While this doesn't sit fully with communications, if you go with this first point of strategic thinking and you are paying attention to the ecosystem, you're paying attention to what is happening either nationally or in the world at large, you would actually see opportunity areas where you can deliver value and use that value to advocate for the resources that you need. So just seeing some comments. I have to pause occasionally to look at comments. Okay. Impacts is mostly saying yes. Yes, Yvonne, that's actually true. There are certain programs and initiatives that you do that the impact is not immediate. However, your donor or the people that are funding, they are not so patient. You cannot tell them, oh, don't worry, wait there, you're going to see the impact in 1 year. And so for programs where implementation or the results will happen, way after, months or years after, you have to in some way sit down and look at the design of that program. Just again, if you know about the theory of change, and we'll be teaching more of this on the course, is to say at which strategic points in this implementation phase can we show traction? What kind of traction can we show? You have to be able to show traction. Nobody is going to wait for you 1 year or 2 years to be able to say, oh, we gave you this money and this is the result. They will have moved on. The world is moving on very, very quickly. And you want sustained attention. You want them to see that, hey, we're doing something, give us more money. And because the world is changing, the macroeconomics of everything means that, cost is rising. The implementation budget that you had is most likely going to increase. So you have to sustain that funding pipeline. So thank you for raising that. Okay, I'll take questions at the end. So I'll just read through the comments. Beneficiary-centric approach connects well with any stakeholders. Yes. Ivy, that's so funny. Okay, so I'll answer questions at the end. I'm just reading the general comments. True strategic thinking narrows down your focus to one thing you can address. Yes, definitely, Mary. Oluwatobi says advocating for the team's needs is crucial too. In my situation, joining the grant writing team helped me to make case for budgets allocated. Exactly. And we have to, like Ivy said, you have to think about it from a business context. While you're not a for-profit organization, we have to steal some concepts from the business world to articulate or to advance some of the things that we're doing. Thank you all for the comments. Please keep it coming. I'm loving reading through them. I will answer the questions at the end so that I don't lose my train of thought in case the question takes us to a different conversation. So we've spoken about thought leadership and narrative building. The next thing is stakeholder management. Look, it's great to do your stakeholder mapping to know who has the power, who has the influence, create all of those charts. But things are changing so rapidly to the point where you need to constantly relook or rethink your stakeholder mapping. So you need to understand your donors. You need to understand what exactly is happening in their world. And that means that you actually have to care. Because before now, the relationship with donors from a communications perspective has been, what is this donor expecting? Let us communicate either in our newsletter. For those of you that might have donor events, I don't know, not everybody does that, but or at the end of the year in our annual report, let us communicate what is important to the donor. If the donor funded a particular initiative, at the end of the day, let us, give them that information in terms of impact. Things have changed. You really have to understand your donor's context. What exactly is happening to them? Are funding sources drying up for them as well? It's not just to collect money from them, it's to understand where they are coming from. So there's a depth in understanding your stakeholders' perspective. So your donors, your beneficiaries, the people that are benefiting, the communities, are we actually listening to them? When we've done the program, when we've implemented, when we've gotten feedback, do we just put the feedback and onto the next program we do not implement? Those are the things that communications now needs to sit on. This feedback we got, how are we implementing, acting on them? Because you want to, again, have that affinity with the community, the beneficiaries, that you're actually making a difference because you actually need them. So effective community engagement, so important. Understanding the dynamics within the community, understanding the power structure. You may not be the relationship manager because you're not on the ground, but you have to ask these questions. You should be in a position where you can empower the relationship owners with the tools to be able to get you the information that you need. And then there's government relations as well. Government priorities, when they're making policies, your NGO, your organization, are they in the room? Are your leaders in the room? If you see a consultation for call for stakeholder consultation on particular policy, do you flag it to your CEO or your executive director to say, hey, we actually need to be there in this conversation before they make a policy that affects the entire work that we're doing? So there's that needs to be done. And then there's crisis and reputation management. That one, I can speak about it for the whole day. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Where in Nigeria, we're in election season, you can just wake up one day, they've dragged your ED, they've dragged your head of programs in the mud for something. So, and this can happen to anybody, anywhere in the world. So Do you have your crisis protocols ready? Do you have your crisis response? Are you proactively anticipating risks? So if the leader of your organization takes a picture with a controversial government leader, whether it's the president or governor, ambassador. I'm just remembering this. What is this thing called now? The Epstein files, that they're linking different people, and it feels like anybody that is linked to that man now in the mud. Are you able to stay on top of what if our leader gets named in this thing? What are we going to do? Those are the realities, and you need to have competencies to be able to deal with this. You need to have competencies to advise. So you're thinking proactively, things that the organization might not be thinking. Those are the things that you need to be thinking about as a communications professional. Okay, I see some more comments. Hi, Mutave. Seeing communication as a continuous process and not just an end to report. Exactly. It's important to help program staff understand buy-in so that this has been brought. Mutave, you said it so beautifully. And I wish we had all the time in the world. There's also a strategy to how do you engage with programs? How do you engage with fundraising team if that's separate in your organization? There has to be a strategy around. It's not a war. We're in the same organization trying to achieve the same objective, but how do we work collaboratively? How do we guide them to? It's influence. That's the substance of influence. Mary says regular updates to keep people in the loop and people can respond to information as it comes. Yes, instead of exactly. You really want to know, and it's that thing about out of sight is out of mind. If you don't keep your donors informed or your key stakeholders or even policymakers, they just think you're not doing anything and you may be working so hard. And you know that I can also say the same thing for us as communications professionals. How many of us actively or proactively report the work that we're doing so that they can see that, hey, comms is actually doing a lot of stuff. So you are actually working. And something that I may encourage you all to do, go and do an audit of what it is or an inventory. And I've done this for a number of teams recently. Do an audit of what you actually do day in, day out, week in, week out. You actually will be very, very, very surprised. If you're actually working, if you're not working, then this thing will not help you. But if you actually put in the work and you sit down and you say, in this work stream, what are the tasks that we do on a weekly basis? Me, I design, I do this, I do that. What are some of the results? And put that in a document that is visible. A lot of us know in our head the work that we're doing, but your leaders cannot see it. So try and document and codify some of these things. You will be so surprised at the results that you will see. So let me wrap up with the last slide so that I can now take questions in the last 20 minutes. Thank you all so much. I'm loving the comments and the feedback that you're all giving. So some tips for career impact, because this is really about how do we use strategic communications to really elevate our work, to make sure that we're driving the outcomes that we want to see and our organizations want to see. And the first thing that I always say is invest in your professional development. You can't just stick to comms. Unfortunately, you have to have cross-functional knowledge to become an indispensable asset. In the webinar, and I would encourage you all, yeah, please watch the webinar. It still applies to you, even if you work in the development sector, and it's on the IAPC Africa website. And if someone, TC admin, if anybody is here, you can put the webinar link in the chat as well, so people can have that as a replay or have that to go and watch. And it's really just understanding different things. Don't be limited to communication. In fact, I came into 2026 being determined that I no longer just want to go for only communications focused events, gatherings, and however you describe it, summits, webinars. I wanted to start going for sector-based engagements so that I can widen my scope, widen my understanding. Sometimes I'm in certain rooms and I'm like, what are these people exactly talking about? However, when I sit down and I understand it and as I listen to them, I begin to see from a communications perspective the impact or the ripple effect of some of these things that they're saying. So you actually find it helpful. So take yourself to other functions. I'm not saying you should become a master, but have awareness, listen to the news, know what is going on, collaborate with programs, even try to understand, okay, what exactly it goes into program design, why is this important, learn about donor relationship management, partnerships. If partnerships is not under your portfolio, you can learn about it, learn about data. You don't need to become an expert, but you have to learn. Is it stretching? Definitely it is. But more and more, because of the way the world is going, you can't just streamline your knowledge to communications. And even that knowledge in communications, it has to be about strategic use of communications. You have to master that. Next thing is elevate your language to high level outcomes and impact that is aligned to the organizational priorities. I've talked a bit about that. You have to really talk in ways that they can see that, oh, this person, what they're saying connects to the outcome that we want to have. So how you communicate, how you speak about your work has to be different. How you document, some of us are really good at implementing, we're not very great at documenting. And there's a reason why documentation is important. There's a reason why data gathering is powerful, because when you're able to show someone that, hey, this is what we've done, this is where we started from, this is where we are now, this is what we've been able to achieve with this, it communicates very, very powerful than just speaking words. So think about how you're codifying or how you're documenting all of the work that you're doing and tying it to higher level outcomes. So remember the competency of strategic thinking. That's where it becomes really important. Stay curious about global trends, from donor shifts to policy changes. It doesn't matter if it's happening in Europe. It doesn't matter if it's happening in Australia. It is relevant to you, it is relevant to your context. So pay attention, because these things, the way the world is, because of how interconnected the world is. So last year, for example, those of you that were working in USAID funded projects, one single decision had a ripple effect across many countries in Africa. So you need to be paying attention. You need to know what's going on. You need to know what is the implication of this, not only for your organization, also for the donors that you're working with. Because if you have a donor and a policy change significantly impacts them, it means that they may not be able to fund your project anymore. It means that a particular program may not go on beyond this present cycle. So you need to know, even in terms of your community and your beneficiaries, how does this impact upon them? And then advocate for communications internally using tangible results and proof points. I'm a big, big, big believer in that, being able to advocate for what you need. Nobody's going to do that for you. In fact, this whole thing of your work speaking for itself, please, if your work, you're not speaking on behalf of your work, they will just be sidelining you. When money comes, they will not remember to send you to comms. They will send you to other people, but you've been doing the work. And is advocacy tedious? Yes, it can be tedious, but the fact is it needs to be done. It needs to be said. It needs to be shown that, hey, comms needs this money, but this is my own thought, and you can choose to use it or not. You advocate up to a point, but it gets to a point where you're like, these people are unrepentant. They are not going to value this work. They are not, and then you have to start planning to how to move to an organization that will value that work. But in the interim, how are you advocating and making a case for your work? So let me pause to take some questions. I hope this has been beneficial for you. Just wanted to share a few tips and all. But let me, in the interim, go through the. Oh, what was that question that I saw? Okay, yes. Chebuka was asking, how do you handle situations where certain stakeholders expect the organization to comment on or engage with national or international issues that fall outside its core goals? Wow, I like this question. One thing that I will start with, and something that I've learned, is that you have to know that your role is to advise. It is now left to the leaders of the organization to take it or not take it. But let it be documented. Let it be known that, hey, I gave you this counsel. Because I used to be really, really bothered before when people, I'm giving counsel and they don't take the advice. It used to burden me. Why are they not listening? I used to be so passionate about it, but I think it was one of my senior mentors that said, no, 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 no. Your duty is to advise. Their duty is to take or not take the counsel. If they now don't take your counsel and the thing spirals or goes in the direction that you were preempting, you will then bring it, but I said so. So that's the starting point. I think in that situation, how I would approach it is I would do a pros and cons of it. This is the risk that you face if you start commenting on national and international issues that are outside of your core goals. This is how you can dilute or alienate your audience if you do it. These are the risks, these are the benefits. And you also have to do this knowing your leaders, because some leaders are very like logical and rational. They like pros and cons type of thing. But I would tell you the implications over a period of time, if you continue to do this, these are the ripple effects. And I don't just use word of mouth. I will show it to you on like a screen data. Look at it, look at this example. This is the risk that you are facing, and also even dependent on the type of issue. And I will go and bring out an example and I will give it to them. Now if they choose to do it or not do it is their cup of tea. Now obviously, because if they choose not to take your advice and their ripple effect and consequence, it comes back to you to sort out the mess. So what I would then do is I will start preparing. Remember, proactive about issues management, about crisis. I will start preparing. Should in case these people do this thing that I'm asking them not to do, how will I deal with it if it spirals? And so I prepare. If this CEO wants to say this thing, if people come, if they are dragging him on Twitter or her on Twitter, if it's picked up by the news, how am I going to respond? And I create my crisis or my plan around that. So I hope that that helps. But it's a really, really tricky situation. I saw another. Okay, I've seen the question. Godwin says, "How do you love from? Or how do you move? I think you wanted to say move. How do you move from brand comms marketing to dev comms? Most times the NGOs always want those with experience in that circle. Currently working." Current rather than those currently working with brands. Yeah, you're right. And I think it's usually with a lot of sectors. So if you want to work with a bank, for example, they would prefer for you to have experience within financial communications, and totally that's true. For you that wants to move from brand comms to dev, I think it's a bit easier because there are a lot of NGOs. So instead of thinking, oh, I want to work with this big international organization, look around you. Are there organizations that you can offer to volunteer with, support their and conferences for me are the low-hanging fruit. A lot of organizations in the development sector, either collectively as an institution or individually, they do these conferences and summits. Pitch yourself, can't shoot your shot, as we will say in Nigeria. Pitch yourself to be part of the communications team to support the work that they're doing. And then that way, what you're doing with some of these things is that you have proof points that, hey, you've been able to do this for this organization. Nobody really cares if you were volunteer or not, but that exposure, that experience, and then the network. Try and also expand your network. So for you, Godwin, I would also say start going for events where you're going to be connecting with development sector people, engage with them, engage with their staff. Just immerse yourself within that space, and opportunities will eventually open up. But just create a plan. So as you're building your knowledge, learning about the nuance, in fact, I would say come for this development communications course, because the thing about communications, I always say it's the principles are universal, the frameworks and the best practices, but how they apply to the different contexts. Development sector is very different from healthcare to finance. And so you must understand that nuance. And that's why they always try to ask for people that understand the industry, because you understand the nuance, you understand the context, and you understand how these principles, because you can't come with your general brand comms, marketing comms, knowledge, the way you do ads, the way you put out messaging, the way you do campaigns. You can't come and do it 100% copy and paste in the development sector. It won't get you the same results. So I hope that helps, Godwin. Okay, so looking at any more questions. Okay, so I see Kyla says the style we use in DevComs is different. Yes, yeah, the terminology style, exactly, they're not the same. So you really do have to learn about the industry. And it's any sector, you want to go to the finance sector, you want to go to the mining sector, it's something I always say, you have to really understand the industry that you're going into. Mutabe says co-creating with the community and showing them how their stories are used is also very important. Yes, exactly, especially if you have a long-term project and you continuously need to engage. And that's also true, because there's some communities that NGOs or non-profits use them for what is called poverty. What is it called again? There's a terminology. You just want to glamorize, or we're doing something, and they keep, so those organizations, or no, those communities, they keep seeing NGOs, non-profits come to do interventions and leave. So they're also kind of like disillusioned as well. So you have to carry them along. You have to show them that you truly care. You have to show them that your organization is really serious about that. Okay. Kailas, you said KPIs in question mark. Was there a question, or maybe it's a follow-up to your previous comment? What cross-functional courses or lessons should we focus on? Gift, it really does vary. For you at the moment, I would say go and learn about advocacy. advocacy, not just from a communications perspective, but how do you advocate? You can, depending on the kind of work that your organization does, you can also learn about policy. In fact, there is a policy webinar that is happening later this afternoon. A friend of mine sent it to me because, like I said, I learn across board because I advise organizations across industries and sectors, and it's about communicating policy. So you may want to go for some of those things about policy, about, again, things that speak to the heart of development, things that speak to the heart of gender. If your organization is doing something gender related, then data, go and learn about data, Google Analytics, SEO. Now there's GEO. In fact, I'm hoping to do a video on GEO at the moment. So go and learn things like that, things that are complementary to the work that you do, program design, program innovation, all of those things. Design thinking, you can actually decide, you know what, I'm going to go and learn about design thinking and ideation. So those are some of the things that you may want to learn. And it says the importance of learning and professional skills in the modern workplace. Exactly, very, very true. Boma, thank you for sharing. Boma, you can also share the link to register for the course as well, so we don't miss that. We're about 10 minutes more to go. Thank you so much for joining, Milelo. Attending, yes, exactly. It is helpful and structured. Awesome. So, any more questions? Yes, Regina, the replay. So, this is going to be live, or the replay actually will be on my YouTube channel, Adedoyin Jaisimi on YouTube. You can watch it, and then once we get off, you can also watch the replay on the same link you used to join. LinkedIn will have that replay on as well, so that replay will be available as well. If you have any organization you feel one can volunteer, let me know. Okay, there are many. Sit down on LinkedIn, even in your environment, you would actually find that there are people that have NGOs or run non-profits and all of that, and events and organizations. I'm not sure if you're in Lagos or if you're in Nigeria, but yeah, I always start with LinkedIn. I love using LinkedIn. Awesome. Any more questions? We're getting to the end. I also want to point out that at the Comms Avenue, we have a number of resources that we've created for people working in this sector. This is an example, our Navigating Development Communications guide. We have guides and resources on development communication. We even have a development communications toolkit. And so you can go on our website, www.thecommsavenue.com/TCA resources, and you can download the toolkit. You can download this guide to really just help you. Our goal really is to make sure that you are equipped with the knowledge and the tools and the network. Also, we're big on networking, that you need to deliver results, because we really want you do a lot of work, you work hard, and we want you to find fulfillment in your role. So that's why we're very, very committed regards doing this as well. So feel free to download, and all of our resources are free. So just go on the website and download. And then just a reminder, we have this development communications course. It's 2 days. If you want to learn more, we're going to be unpacking some of the things that I've shared today, really giving practical tips. We're going to give you frameworks. We're going to give you tools. We're going to give you templates. All of these things. I don't believe in teaching theory alone. You have to make it very practical, so that when people get off the course, they can apply. And anyone who is taking a course with us at the Comms Avenue, they always say how they're able to apply it. And most importantly, they're able to apply it and get results. So we start on the 27th of June, which is a Saturday. Yes, you're going to sacrifice 2 Saturdays, but I believe it will be very beneficial. And I'm joined by Leslie Jolu. She used to be our executive director at the Comms Avenue, and now she's the communications and influence manager at One Campaign. And if you know One Campaign, it's a global development organization, and they do fantastic work across Africa and different other continents. So you're going to be learning from people that have practical insights we can relate to, and we can answer your questions as best as we can, just contextualizing the things that you share with us. And then finally, please feel free to connect with me. So I have my website, which I just recently updated. I'm planning to share more insights with communicators, but also organizational leaders on strategic communication. So it's www.adedoyinjaisimi.com. So feel free to go there, bookmark the website, because you're going to be seeing new things resources, tips, insights. And then I have courses as well, which is linked to my YouTube channel. I should have put my YouTube channel link here, but my YouTube channel is just search what they do in me. And I have a lot of videos there, just again to really, really help communicators working across different sectors, practical information. I share my experiences, I share the things that I'm learning. So feel free to check out my website. Follow me on LinkedIn or add me on LinkedIn. I'll follow you back. And then you can also send me an email if you have any questions. You feel like, okay, Adedoye, you said this, but I still need clarity on this. You can also send me an email. So we have about 5 minutes. Let me go through the last batch of questions. Okay, Gift says, how do you handle situations of do as I gift from your top leaders instead of letting you work as one who understands? That's a very, very, very tricky one because there are organizations like that where they just want you to they want you to be an order taker. So you are in the system. I think, first of all, understand the system. If you unpack the system, who are the influencers within that system? Who can I use as a voice or a channel to advocate my cause, to advocate my new direction? Don't think you can change the entire system single-handedly. It's not going to be possible, especially if that organization has existed for a long time. But you can understand the power structure and the dynamics and see how you can use it for your own good. Sometimes you can choose to quote and unquote rebel and do something a new way in tandem with what they're asking you to do and show them that, look, these are the results, right? But I only advise being in this kind of context for just a very limited period of time because it's very, very stressful. So gift, you can't perform miracles. You're not saying, yeah, you're not Jesus, right? Another thing I would say is pray. This kind of situation, every time you go and pray because there's nothing the Lord cannot do. But after a while, you see that these people, they are not changing, they are not listening, they are not hearing. Perhaps it's time to have a conversation with yourself and say, okay, it's time for me to move. But then use the lessons that you have learned in this organization and use it when you are now scoping out your next organization. Questions you need to ask before you enter to make sure that these people truly value your role. Because why are they employing you if they're not going to listen to you, right? So try and understand the power dynamics. Try and see if you can move the needle a little bit. Try and see if that will make a difference. If it doesn't, start planning your exit so that you don't get burnt out. Unit says, do you think it's ideal to work with a profit-oriented organization as a copywriter, content writer for someone? I won't say it's not ideal, but if you really want to build that career in development communications, I would say start going towards non-profit. So there are profit-oriented organizations that have like CSR, so that can be like a sweet spot to start. So maybe focusing more on their CSR-related things. But if you want to build a career within the sector, you really want to build your portfolio within the sector. So it may not help you in the long run. So you have to really think about it. So because again, we know how the job landscape is. What I always like to try to see, what can I do with where I currently am? So do they have any impact work? Do they have any CSR projects that I can give myself to and amplify that as well so that people know that, oh, I have an interest in this sector. Pending the time I can get like a full-on opportunity to work in this space. Mark says human-centered design is coming up strongly in most projects. How do we as development corporate DevComs incorporate it into our work? So when you say human-centered design, so is that design in terms of, I'm thinking of it in terms of, is it how you design your program or how you design your creatives, your visual elements? But most generally, any new emerging thing that is coming up that you want to incorporate, one of the first things that you need to ask is, how does this impact on the work that I'm doing? What is the outcome? So this human-centered design, if it is coming up in project, what difference is it going to make? What you don't want to do is jump on a trend for the sake of jumping on a trend. What is it going to do differently? What does it mean for me to incorporate it? So does this mean that I need to put more human angle stories into my work? Does it mean that I need to feature more people within my organization? Does it mean we now have to do things like, focus groups? What does human-centered design mean in our own context? So that's how I think about trends. You always have to break it down and think about what it means for your own context. Can I do something on marketing comms? Okay, Agnes, noted. Eunice, I've answered your question also. Maybe you watch the replay because we're running out of time. If you watch the replay, you'll catch my answer. Boma, if you can share again the link to register for the course so that MM can have it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ovida, if you could please share the link to the course again so that MM can have it, that would be very good. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that this has been beneficial and valuable for you. And I hope you've taken out at least one thing that you can take back to your work and also implement in the work that you're doing, making a difference. And I am rooting for you. Look, my biggest joy is when I see communications professionals thriving because we do a lot of work. A lot of it is not appreciated or recognized sometimes, but the fact is that we work hard, and I want to see you succeed. I want to see you thrive, and I want to see you earn the money that you should be earning. Yes, that must actually be said. So I hope you take the information that has been shared today and use it for the work that you have or that you are doing. So thank you so much, everyone. So for those of you that will be enrolling for the course, I will see you in class. For others, I will connect with you on LinkedIn or via my YouTube channel. And like I said, you can send me an email if you want to continue the conversation as well. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Bye.